Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us and thanks for being part of our community. My name is Ricky Simpson and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Microsoft Defender for Identity, and I'm going to be your host for today. So just a few reminders for before we start. If you're having issues viewing the stream anytime during the presentation, and if you're using the web browser of Teams, the web browser version, please refresh your browser in the first instance. And if you're using the desktop app of Teams, please exit the call and rejoin to fix any issues there. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We'll post the recordings of our community on our community site at aka.ms/security webinars. Feel free to ask any questions at the time by typing them in the live Q&A window by clicking the Ask a Question button. Be aware that any questions that you post will be publicly visible. However, if you prefer, you can post your question anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter it. And also, closed captions in several languages are available during the live broadcast. You can enable them by clicking on the CC button located at the lower right corner of your screen. So we get a lot of questions during these webinars, which is great, obviously, and we will do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event that their answer wasn't available at the time, or if you have any additional questions after the event, please don't hesitate to raise them on our Defender for Identity discussion forum, and you can find that at aka.ms/MDI community. And if you're listening to this after the fact as a recording, that's also a great place to ask a question if you have one that wasn't addressed during the webinar. We'd love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars as well. You can do that at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. And I would also like to invite you to join our public community by visiting aka.ms/security community. And that's the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community page, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. And you'll be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, aka.ms/security PRP. You'll have a look at feature requests, give feedback, review our product roadmaps, register for events, or join webinars like these. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people who create them. So we very much hope that you will join us there. So in today's session, we have Daniel Naim, who will guide us through some of the latest detection capabilities in Microsoft Defender for Identity. We also have Banu Jafarli handling the Q&A as and when it comes in. So Daniel is a senior program manager with the Defender for Identity team, and he heads up our detection portfolio. And without further ado, I will turn it over to him. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ricky. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to, although virtually, see you all. It's been a long time since we had the opportunity to talk to you. We usually do it, obviously, in live conferences, in conferences, and but we didn't want to keep you hanging with all of the information about Microsoft Defender for Identity, and this is why we are doing such webinars. The last webinars that we've done was around security posture assessment that was done by my colleague, and today we wanted to give you a little bit of a glimpse of what Microsoft Defender for Identity is doing when it comes to our detection offering. As Vicky mentioned, please feel free to send any question in chat. We'll try to bring the important ones live so we can address them for all of you. And let's start. Let's try to process this intimidating slide just for a second. I'm not gonna take a lot of time explaining it, because this one, if you take a close look into it, really correlates to your day-to-day job and works, and you pretty much can understand what's going on. But I will do it anyway, just to put everyone on the same page in order to help understanding where Microsoft Defender for Identity fits into the broader Microsoft 365 Defender offering. So what I wanted to show here is a basic example of how attack looks like, and to put an emphasis that attacks goes beyond a certain security product or different kill chain. And if I'll take one attacker as, if I'll take attack as my reference, I wouldn't say that attacker thinks in how they how Microsoft or other detection platforms are trying to detect them, but they are actually trying to do the opposite and go bypass them. This example provide a very simple use case where an attack can start from a malicious email that contains an attachment, and these attachments contain exploitation. And once being clicked on the attachment, there is the endpoint is compromised, and then the attacker is trying to move laterally in the network in order to achieve and access the crown jewels of a certain network. Obviously, this is a very simple overview of how attack look like, and we have certain attacks that will start from compromised endpoint, and we have an attacker that will magically will start after the first lateral movement and reach into the crown jewels. But just to give you an example of how a simple attack look like and how complex it from a detection or from security point of view, that it goes across the different type of products and different type of solutions. And I hope that this is not new concept for you, Microsoft 365 Defender. But if it does, let's put a little bit of an explanation of our offering. This is basically an automated cross-domain security product that combines and uses the power of each individual product in order to create capabilities like detections and investigation and response capabilities into one single source. Basically, Microsoft provides you the ability to correlate between all of the signals that in a simple attack that we've seen before in an example, and put them and provide you good value with the thing that you can see right here. First and foremost, the ability to see all of the data in one portal with unified entities, no more clicking in, seeing the Microsoft Defender for Office alert in one portal, and then try to investigate the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint in a different portal, and then try to mitigate the file or reset the user password in a different portal. So the ability to contain and to investigate everything in just one place. But obviously, the UI is not what drives us in Microsoft 365 Defender, and neither the product that I was just mentioning, but also some other security capabilities, like the ability to stop the threats before they even execute, either by providing you security assessments or misconfigurations, or finding what are the risky entities that you need to mitigate or to revoke access to. Microsoft 365 Defender also allows you the capability of providing response and automated healing to revert certain attacks to the state that they were before with built-in remediation scripts. Another thing that we are providing with Microsoft 365 Defender across all of the products that are involved is the ability to do unified threat intelligence and analytics that are shared between all of the products. So an intel that was starting from Microsoft Defender for Identity can expand and provide information that is found on Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or MCAS or any other product in this regard, and the ability to do cross-product threat hunting by yourself. So everything up until now is obviously come out of the box. You don't need to configure much. All the alerts, either that are alerts that are related to a certain vector or a certain security product, or alerts that are provide you signals from a different product, are coming out of the box. But you also have the ability to create, to hunt over the data yourself, and obviously all of that is being enabled by a common set of management and API and connectors across all of the suites. So you don't need to individually connect each product into your SIEM solution, whether it's Sentinel or a different thing, or you don't need to pull the information from each individual product. You just do it from M365 Defender. I promise I will do only 2 to 3 minutes about Microsoft 365 Defender. Obviously, there are a lot of more information that you can use to learn more. But in this session, we will focus mainly around Microsoft Defender for Identity and some enrichments that we are doing in Microsoft 365 Defender. It's just worth to mention that Microsoft 365 Defender is available if you have just one license for each product that Microsoft 365 Defender is built upon, which is Microsoft Defender for Office, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Defender for Identity, and or Microsoft Cloud Application Security. So let's start with understanding what is Microsoft Defender for Identity, or a quote that I've heard personally too many times. What? Another Defender for something? Yes. So let's try to explain what is Microsoft Defender for Identity. So Microsoft Defender for Identity is, as the name suggests, and is the place where we try to protect the identities, the on-premise identities in the network, your Active Directory asset, both as an asset for and as a surface for sophisticated attacks, and also for as a value, as an asset in the environment that is responsible for identity and authentications. What we do is similar to different Microsoft Defender products. We do it across different type of, we provide 4 values or main values: the ability to prevent attacks before they are even starting, using the security posture assessment. This is the webinar that we had a couple of months back. We also have the ability to detect using analytics and events and data intelligence that we are collecting online, and create detections based on them. And then obviously when there is a detection that you would like to investigate the compromised identity, the ability to understand what are risky users, what are your lateral movement path that you'd like to mitigate, and obviously the ability to either manually or automatically respond to compromised identities by reset the user password or disabling a compromised user, and so on and so forth. In today's session, we'll focus around the detection, investigation, and response actions aspects, and let's get the deep dive into that. So in order to understand Microsoft Defender for Identity value, we need to understand that Active Directory and on-premise identities are still playing crucial roles when it comes to cybersecurity, either by attackers that understand that this is a surface that they are trying to target. They understand the value of this asset. They understand the thing that they can achieve by getting an access to the Active Directory or using on-premise identities. Although the Microsoft recommendation obviously is to use Azure Active Directory as much as possible, we obviously encourage that. We understand that in certain environments and in certain use cases, on-premise identities and Active Directory will still play a major role in years to come. And you can see just some example from the last few months around certain attacks or techniques or tools that have been used differently out in the wild, either ZeroLogon, which was a very popular attack, and the Nobelium, which is a SolarWinds campaign, and some tools that are leveraging all of those exploits and vulnerabilities in order to create to achieve access to the Active Directory. So let's talk a little bit about the security values that we are providing. Basically, we are providing you the ability to do security posture management for your on-premise users, both for your Active Directory and for the ADFS assets, and reducing the attack surface. We are providing you the ability to detect, investigate, and respond to AD and on-premise attacks. We provide very, very quick deployment where you can install Microsoft Defender for Identity relatively in complex environment relatively quick, as you can see. Our detection approach is very, very laser focused. We try to be very, very precise and effective and provide you low number of alerts. We understand the concept of alert fatigue and the fact that you need to handle with a lot of alerts with every security product. And we ensure you that every alert that is being detected with maintaining good signal to noise ratio, so we will not be missing attacks, is very, very precise. We'll contain as much as information as we can and provide you enough information so you can investigate it effectively and easily. We provide some of the most unique detections that I've personally seen, although I'm coming from Microsoft Defender for Identity, so obviously I would say that, but I invite you to look at certain attacks and certain tools that I mentioned in this call, or tools that I didn't mention, and see which other products are covering that, and you'll see that Microsoft Defender for Identity will come with the upper end when it comes to detection identities across the kill chain. And obviously, we are integrated into Microsoft 365 Defender, as I mentioned, for your investigation, incident correlation, advanced hunting, which I will demonstrate along this session. So, just for those of you who are looking to learn about Microsoft Defender for Identity for the first time, basically, we support two types of protection for assets, one of them being the domain controller, obviously, and recently we expanded our capability into the ADFS asset, which is both supported with the same sensor, which requires you to have Windows Server 2008. And you can see all of the technical requirements here. Obviously, everything is mentioned in our documentation, so you don't need to copy and paste it. You can just take a look. you'll see that, and I'll talk a little bit about it as part of our detection offering. You'll see that we are collecting some events from the endpoint, and this is to create to support our detection offering and our security posture offering, and I'll talk a little bit about it. So what are we going to talk? So if you remember this, the three silos, the four silos, the one starting with prevention. So we said that this one was covered in the previous one, in the previous webinar. In today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about the ability to do real-time analytics and data intelligence using network traffic and activities that we collect and create detection based on them. The ability to investigate all of that using M365 Defender, and the ability to do response. So let's talk a little bit about detections, activities, and the in-between. So it is good to start with understanding of how Microsoft Defender for Identity actually works. So we do have a sensor, as I mentioned before, that you need to install on all of your Active Directories and ADFS. This is a very lightweight sensor that doesn't require a complex installation. Once it's installed, you don't need to do anything. It will handle updates on its own. Basically, we use four data types or types of information in order to provide our security offering. One of them we do analyze the traffic and the network traffic that the Active Directory or the ADFS is being aware of. We inspect the network traffic for LDAP, for NTLM, for Kerberos, for DNS, for SMB, and for RPC. Basically, all of the methods that are not encrypted. Another layer that we are using in order to create detection is events. We are using either the events that are happening on the Windows side, and we have a mechanism to capture events on our own in order to correlate them, in order to create a profile for the entities. We are also learning about the Active Directory objects, and we parse them in order to provide you greater visibility of what are the assets and the identities and the devices in your network. And we correlate them obviously with the network traffic. Once we have the user profile and the entities, we create a baseline using the information. So Microsoft Defender for Identity does require you to install it for a certain period of time. And in this period of time, which depends on the type of the detection, it takes between 2 weeks to 30 days. In this time, we learn what is the baseline of the network, so we can create, we can understand what is an abnormality or what goes behind this baseline that we created. I know a lot of you may think right now that, oh, what happened if I install Microsoft Defender for Identity if my network is already sort of compromised or have something in it? Obviously, we have a mixture of detections that do require learning period, but we do have certain detections that will trigger no matter what, and we will discuss it when we talk a little bit more about each individual detection that we provide. But basically, it's not that it will be missed. And even if we detect something within the learning period, and then we didn't trigger it because we were still in the learning, and then by the time the learning period was over, we realized this was abnormality, we will retroactively open the alert that we found in order for the SOC to investigate. So let's talk a little bit about what type of detection we are offering. So basically, as I mentioned, and this is the most basic one, we have network-based detections that are based on anomalies and understanding what should happening on the network or not. It can be either network scanners that we will rule out for certain detections, and it can be other profiling that we are doing on for data exploitation and more like that. We have our behavioral detections, which are basically our secret sauce or our ability to correlate between something that is happening on the network layer with something that is happening on the events perspective on the Active Directory, and try to understand the behavior of certain attack. So let's say that I have AS threat posting, and the first part of AS threat posting is the ability to understand which users by reconnaissance as a certain attributes turned on, and then try to ask for a curve TGT for these users. The correlation of those two activities that are happening together within short period of time is what we call the behavioral detection, because it doesn't detect any certain tool, or it doesn't detect any sort of malicious activity, but rather what the attack is representing on the low level. The two last type of detections are pretty much self-explanatory. We are up to date with CVEs for that are either targeting Active Directory, targeting a specific service, using network activities against the Active Directory or against identity aspect. And the same goes for a tool. I don't need to mention them. You know most of them, and probably you know more than I do. But we can detect Metasploit and Mimikatz and so on and so forth. Again, as I mentioned, these detections are more of a legacy detection that we used to have with Microsoft 365 Defender and the enrichment that we can get from Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Those are more signature oriented and pretty much covered there. So to be fair, we are phasing away from tool and signature based detection and try to provide more complex detections, understanding the bits and bytes of each tool or each module of a tool, and try to detect it this way. So let me go over our detection offering. As I mentioned before, we are very laser focused when it comes to detections, and we have a relatively low number of different types of detections that we provide. All of those detections are translated into alerts once they are triggered or once they are happening on the network, and they are happening, and we have certain detections across the kill chain, obviously starting with reconnaissance, but goes for credentials access, lateral movement, and persistence, and some detections for exfiltration, although this is not our main focus. Let's pick some detections as example per detection kill chain, and we can start with reconnaissance. As we have seen out in the wild that a lot of attackers, before they are trying to do something, obviously they need to understand where they have landed, where they are trying to achieve, how they can find a user or account with certain privileges that they can compromise, and this basically relates to the reconnaissance aspect. We have seen activity that are happening against certain entity attributes. You can send an LDAP to give me all of the users that does not require password in order to log in, or that that have constraint delegation turned off, or have multi-factor authentication turned off as well. We've seen a lot of attackers or have SPN configured, and this is related to the reconnaissance by the target entity attributes, and those queries are being detected and by Microsoft Defender for Identity as a detection of their own. And even if the attacker will do a simple type of reconnaissance, which is what we consider to be abnormality, because obviously reconnaissance is a part where things can happen naturally on the network, and this is why we require some of our learning period. So when there will be a user and IP address enumeration or specific group enumeration, we will try to see if the initiator of this query is someone who is supposed to be doing that or not. And if not, we will trigger an alert. Even if we see this, the type of enumeration, the activity of enumeration was triggering on the network, was happening on the network, we will, and it was part of what we classify as legitimate activity, we will still provide you the ability to see all of the activities as the raw activity, so you can hunt over them, you can create detections based on them by yourself, and you can investigate them and understand a little bit more about what was going on this regard. Let's talk a little bit about the credentials access. So basically, once you have a certain user that you'd like to access, you can either try to do brute force. It goes for brute force for ADFS activities and for AD activities. You can try to do Kerborasting for a specific user. You can do ASREP roasting. All of that is being detected. Another thing that I like to talk about is the ability to set up some ANI tokens. So users that should not be doing any sort of authentication activities in the network naturally. So you configure them in Microsoft Defender for Identity, and whenever they are being touched and try to authenticate with those credentials, we will trigger an alert. I know this is a very basic offering, and but we really believe we see this detection do wonders, because obviously the accounts and the devices are very, very appealing to a specific attacker. And this is another offering that we are doing. I don't want to speak a little too much about NetLogon because we will have a dedicated slice on that. But basically, this is a CVE that was published towards the end of last year, and provide you the ability to control AD by opening a NetLogon channel from every device that has direct access to the Active Directory. This is also being triggered by Microsoft Defender for Identity using our network parsers and behavioral detections that we provide. Let's talk about lateral movement and persistence, and you'll see some of the detections here are soon to be coming, and some of them are related to the SolarWinds campaign. As you can see, the DCSync is a detection that is already available. But let's start from the lateral movement. Obviously, once you found a compromised user, you would like to try to access it. It can be either by doing a pass the ticket and use the same ticket in different devices that has never been used before. Same goes for pass the hash or overpass the hash. The ability to take a certificate, a physical certificate from, a certificate from a smart card and use it in a different place, or doing injection of the seed history for a certain user and inject it into a third user's. And some modification of group memberships. So if a certain user should not be in a high privilege group, we will track the modification of those changes with our detection offering. As for persistence and a little bit for exploitation, you'd see that all of the golden ticket using time anomaly, or when you try to change the lifetime of a certain ticket and use it outside of this lifetime, or the size anomaly, where you try to modify the PCR in the group that the ticket is part of. The golden ticket using resource-based constraint delegation is a great example, and the ability to do code execution or to create services on ADFS and the domain controller is a good example of how we protect not just the identity as I want to say user, but also the asset that is responsible for the identities, which is in our cases, or either the domain controller or the ADFS. Let's say I'm trying to install a scheduled task that every time the device is being boot, it will run a certain script that will take a snapshot of the current objects of the Active Directory. We will track the either remote code execution or the service creation on the device itself. And some of our learnings from Nobelium, we would like to also provide detections and mitigations where it comes to the ADFS, and to be more precise, when the DKM key is being read, which is a thing that we've seen during Nobelium, or when the trusted domain for the ADFS is being changed and added. All of those are learnings that we had from the recent campaign, the recent Nobelium campaign. And we understand that it's very, very easy to detect using Microsoft Defender for Identity, and this is why we expanded our capabilities beyond the domain controller into the ADFS, and we provide those type of detections. Another detection that is a CVE based, we have seen this in a recent campaign, is the ability to do remote code execution on server vulnerability. We managed to pinpoint a certain attribute in when it's being used. It's correlated to the CVE, which is another great example of mitigations to certain campaigns that are happening against identities and on-premise identities. I promised I would talk a little bit about the ZeroLogon, and now we do it better together with Microsoft Defender for Identity, for Endpoint, with M365 Defender and Microsoft Threat Expert. So on August 2020, Microsoft published a critical vulnerability around the NetLogon protocol, which allow every device with direct access or network access to the Active Directory to basically reset his password and change it to whatever he wants. Very, very critical vulnerability. And using Microsoft Defender for Identity, we were able to detect uses of this vulnerability, and we reached out to certain customers using Microsoft Threat Expert by pushing them alerts with the relevant information that Microsoft Defender for Identity and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint can provide. And we've seen within the first week, and it goes beyond that, a lot of customers were affected by this tool. The peak that you are seeing here is when Mimikatz was creating releasing a new version that contains ZeroLogon, and I think it was the other peak that we can see around here is when Qualys vulnerability scanner released their offering for ZeroLogon, and we have seen this as being and we detected that as part of the customer who were trying to see which security vendor can protect that, and luckily Microsoft Defender for Identity is one of them. So we mainly were focused around alerts today, but we also provide you the ability to, with low signal values, and correlate them together, create anomalies, and then feed them back into Microsoft 365 Defender and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and MCAS in order to provide you the good visibility of what's going on in the network. So even if we are not alerting on something, we will still provide you all of the activity that is happening in order for you to create and hunt over the data yourself. And we do encourage customers to do that because we believe that you know your network the best, you know your industry the most, and you know what type of attacks you'd like to mitigate. And this is why we really believe in sharing all of the intel and the information as much as we can, so you can have as much as visibility into the raw data, but also the alerts in your investigation. So this was the detection part. Let's talk a little bit about how to do an end-to-end investigation in M365 Defender. And yes, I promise you, this will be the only portal that you'll be using in order to use any Microsoft 365 Defender related security product. So, and this is our goal, to move most of the experiences from the traditional Microsoft Defender for Identity portal into Microsoft 365 Defender. And this is the first, one of the first experiences that we are providing. This is the look and feel of Microsoft 365 Defender. As you can see, this alert is part of an incident, and this alert has information about all of the accounts and all of the entities that this alert is containing. And if I'll go to a certain account, for example, admin2, I will have a context for this account from different sources. Again, this is the Microsoft 365 Defender portal, where we have the unified user and information. So you can see the investigation priority of the user, you can see the anomalies of the user, you can see all of the alerts, you can see the events that are that the user is having, also the lateral movements for this specific user. And if I go back to the alert, you'll see that there is jumping point not just for the user, but also information, aggregated information about the device, both for Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and Microsoft Defender for Identity, and the ability to do hunting, as I said, over the data. You can see that there are different type of data schemes for the applications and identities, but also for emails. And if I'll scroll down in this screenshot, where I can't, but you'll have to believe me, you'll see the device data sets as well. But instead of me just showing you screenshots, let's see it live in Microsoft 365 Defender. So this is the Microsoft 365 Defender portal. All you need to do is security.microsoft.com. If you haven't onboarded yet, you'll go through a very rather quick onboarding process, where it will import all of the information that you have from the various products that you currently have onboarded. And this is an incident. This is a new concept that Microsoft 365 Defender was introducing, is basically the ability to correlate certain type of alerts into one singular entity. which called incident, which allow you to do quick investigation within context of certain attacks, which is also being investigated using auto IR capabilities and remediation capabilities. And let's take a look at what we can see here. So at first, when I see this Microsoft 365 Defender incident, I can see that it's built with 7 alerts across 3 different types of the kill chain, which is the credentials access, the discovery, and 3 alerts for lateral movements. I can see the timeline of all of those alerts. I can see what are the evidence that were found, and I can see that this incident is related to 2 devices and 2 users. And let's go to the actual alerts that are building up this incident to understand very, very quickly, but rather efficiently, what is going on. I can see that this alert is starting with reconnaissance over SMB for certain user and IP addresses. And this is alert that is from identity perspective, from Microsoft Defender for Identity. But then I can see that there is an endpoint alert for the SMB session that is happening on the domain controller. And I can see that the user that was trying to do that, and I can see also the device that this was initiated from. I can see those were linked into the same incident because they share the same device. And then, and this is really, really interesting to see, I can see that right after, let me show you actually the time, within seconds or milliseconds, we have seen that there was a command line that used to do that was doing overpass the hash, and this is from the endpoint perspective, but I can see from the identity that we also have suspected overpass the hash using Kerberos. And then it was successfully logged in, and then we've seen that there was a credential theft activity. And we can, with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, we can actually provide you information about the malicious credential theft tool that was used. So let me just go into one specific alert. I can see information and about the alert. I can see that the source device that that was using, the source host that the account was using, and the destination, which in our case was the domain controller. I can see that Ron HD on victim PC successfully authenticated against Contoso DC, and then the alert is providing you the information about what happens and in this certain alert. Another thing that I really excited to show you, this is the first alert of this incident, which is the initial user and IP address reconnaissance. With Microsoft 365 Defender, we will trigger automatic playbooks that will be happening either on the user or on the device, depends on what was the originating alert, to try to find extra evidence on things that were happening on the device at the same time, effectively pinpointing the exact tool that was used in order to create, to do this type of reconnaissance. And in this case, I can see there was 5 evidence entities that were found, and I can see that all of them were files, and I can actually see the DLLs for these files. And since this is all coming from Microsoft 365 Defender and not just from identity, I can just click on one of them. I can isolate or add it to the block file, or allow and block a list of all of the files that are happening that I want to do on my network. And I can easily go to hunting from this one and understand where effectively this file is found in the network across all of the security product offering. Basically, I can tweak the dates and try to find either by file name, by file SHA, by the initiating file for this DLL. Sorry, this DLL can be the initiator for a certain DLL or a certain file. All of this can be easily search across device file events, email attachments information, and cloud application events. Basically, all of the data sets that can contain file information. All of the actions will be reflected in the Action Center, and you can see the actions that are supported are related to files mostly, but also for device. You can isolate the device, you can run AV scan on the device, you can and let's talk a little bit about our third topic, which is response actions on user. I know we have little time, so it should be relatively quick topic to cover. So detections are cool and everything, but I want to do something with what I find, and I don't want to limit myself to just files or devices. So currently, we provide you the ability to do containment of risky users using Microsoft 365 Defender that is being enriched with Microsoft Defender for Identity. So disable user is something that you can do right now exclusively on AAD, but in the very, very near future, and this is like a sneak peek on the AD itself. So basically, you can turn off the user within the Active Directory. I did want to mention things that are not related directly to AD, but they are related to identity. So you can revoke the user session. So even if it's logged into a device, you can revoke the user session, and then the session token will be refreshed. So the user will be logged out of the thing that is currently doing. Obviously, change and reset password, which is available today for AAD and will be available in AD as well. And confirm user as compromised, which is basically the joker, where it just set the user in AAD too high, in AAD information protection, and then you can define what you want to be, what you want the policy to be. Let's say enable multi-factor authentication, reset the user password, and this requires multi-factor authentication, and so on and so forth. This is really tailor-made response action for AAD. So where it comes to AAD, which is just right around the corner, when you will be able to do reset the user password and disable it, not just on AAD, but also on the AD. We are close. We are coming to be close on time, so just wanted to say that it was great having you all today. It's a good opportunity to discuss about Microsoft Defender for Identity and its values and the items that we are investing a lot of time in. I am personally in conversation with a lot of customers in order to shape what we offer and what we do. We really believe within Microsoft in being customer obsessed. So all of the things that you've seen here is things that we worked with our private preview customers and with our partners. And obviously, if you're an MDI customers, it's very, very easy to enroll into those Microsoft Defender for Identity or any other product, to be more precise, relatively easy in order to onboard them. So just reach out. You have a lot of methods, and if you don't find one that is good for you, feel free to reach out directly to me, either by Twitter or LinkedIn or email, and I'll do the best that I can in order to help you. And I hope that if you asked questions over chat, you got some good answers. And if not, feel free to reach out for the MDI community as much as you can. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, Daniel. Okay, so our next Microsoft 365 Focus webinar is on Tuesday, June 8th and it will be focused on Microsoft's Cloud App Security and protecting your Salesforce environment using MCAS. And for details and registration, please visit us on aka.ms/security webinars, where you can also find out and register for all the other upcoming webinars that we have in our calendar. So I'd like to close out this webinar by thanking Daniel for an excellent presentation. Thank you to Banu as well, who helped answer all the questions that were coming in. But most of all, I want to thank all of you for being part of the community and for joining us on these webinars. I'm going to repost the informational links that I put up at the start of the call back into the chat. So we'll be online for another 30 seconds or so, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you very much and goodbye.